Good morning, students. So here we have our math assignment for Tuesday, and we're going to be dividing decimals by whole numbers, and this time with zeros in the dividend. So what that means is we may have to add zeros to our problem to complete them. So if we have a problem like this one, in this example, 5 going into 1.3, we would need to add a 0 because we're going to be left over with a number on the bottom. And I'm going to show you how that works. So for the first example, I've completed it here, and then I'm going to do the samples with you. So for our example, we have 5 going into 1.3. And notice here how I added a 0. This is why. So first we have to figure out if 5 can fit into 1. Once we notice that 5 cannot fit into 1, then we decide if 5 can fit into 13. And it can. How many times? 2. So I put a 2 up here. 5 times 2 is 10. So then I did 13 minus 10, which gave me 3. However, 5 cannot fit into 3, and when you have a decimal, you do not do remainders. So what can you do? You have to add a 0. So I've added a 0, and you can add as many zeros as necessary when you are working to the right of the decimal. So I added a 0, which makes this number 0.30. And we know that 5 can definitely fit into 30. How many times? 6. So because 5 fits into 30 exactly 6 times, there is no remainder. And we are left with 0.26. Now, if all of this seems a little confusing at first, don't worry, I'm going to do the same steps with the 2 samples, and of course we can work together over Zoom. The whole point though is just make sure that if you have a number left over at the bottom like I did here, and you have nowhere to put it, try adding a 0. So here for our first sample on page 56, we have 2 into 1.3. So let's do this one together. First, can 2 fit into 1? No. But can 2 fit into 13? Notice how for right now I am ignoring the decimal. That's because I'm going to place my decimal at the very end. That makes solving the problem a lot easier. So I'm going to use a piece of paper so that it's a little bigger. 2 into 1.3. And like I said, 2 cannot fit into 1, but it can fit into 13. How many times? 6. 2 fits into 13 6 times. And what is 2 times 6? 12. It is the largest number before 13 that 2 can fit into. So then we would subtract 13 minus 12 is 1. Notice still how I am ignoring the decimal. But now I'm left over with a 1 here. Now we're used to just using any extra numbers as remainders. But because we're working to the right of a decimal, we're not going to do that. We're going to add a 0 and see if that helps. Yes, now we have a 10 here. 2 definitely fits into 10. How many times? 5. And 2 times 5 is 10. 10 minus 10 is 0. So all we have to do is put our decimal straight up, and our answer is 0.65. So notice how just adding that 0 helped me to complete the problem. Let's do the second sample. 5 into 2.3. At first, I will ignore the decimal to make solving the problem easier. Can 5 fit into 2? Nope. Can 5 fit into 23? Definitely. How many times? Well, if I calculate it, it would be 4 times, and 5 times 4 is 20. I'm going to subtract as if there was no decimal. 23 minus 20, we have a 3 left over. Remember, we do not just add a remainder, so what can we do? Let's add 0. Can 5 fit into 30? Yes. How many times? 6. And because 5 fits into 30 exactly 6 times, we're left with nothing. We move our decimal up, and now we have 0.46. So I'm going to go ahead and do number 1 just to have an extra one to give an example for. Of course, if you still have some doubts or you're confused, please let me know over Zoom and we can work together. Here for number 1, we have 2 into 0.23. And this time, our number does fit into the first number, so let's try it like that. So 2 fits into 2 one time. 2 times 1 is 2. 0, we bring down our 3, just like normal division. 2 fits into 3 how many times? Just once. 3 minus 2 is 1. Now we have a 1 left over. We're not just going to use a remainder, we're going to add a 0. Can 2 fit into 10? Definitely 5 times. And it fits evenly, so we just put our decimal up. So pretty much for almost every problem on this page, you're going to have to add a decimal at the end and then complete the problem. So here for our language arts assignment for Tuesday, we are continuing on adverbs and how they modify adjectives and other modifiers. So here on page 94 it says, can adverbs really modify other modifiers? And we're going to go over what that means. So let's read our directions first. It says, even though adverbs usually modify verbs, that's what we've been doing, they can also modify adjectives and other adverbs. When adverbs modify adjectives, they come immediately before those adjectives and usually tell how or to what extent. So here we have some examples. That apple was truly delicious. Delicious is an adjective because it describes the noun apple. And truly is an adverb because it describes the adjective delicious. And it's telling how delicious, so it's telling to what extent. I mean how, not to what extent. The next one will tell to what extent. An extremely helpful boy carried my suitcase for me. Helpful is an adjective telling what kind of boy. Extremely is an adverb telling to what extent. The boy was helpful, which in this case is extremely. So up here, truly tells how, and down here, extremely tells to what extent. When adverbs modify other adverbs, they come immediately before those adverbs and usually tell how or to what extent. To and very are adverbs which describe adjectives or other adverbs. So it says, he walked too fast for me to keep up with him. Fast to what extent? 2. The kitten purred very softly on my lap. How softly? Very. So notice how These adverbs are answering these questions. So here on the bottom it says, think. In each of the following sentences is an adverb which modifies an adjective or adverb. Underline the adverb and draw a small neat arrow to the adjective or adverb it modifies. So this is very close to what we have been doing. You're just going to draw an arrow, this time making sure that you're drawing it to the adjective or the adverb, not the verb. So for the first one, it says, are we almost there, Dad? So I'm glad I'm doing number one with you because this one can be a little confusing as it is a question and some of the words are reversed. So what we're going to do is, in this case, we are going to underline the adverb almost and then point it to there. Remember that there is answering the question where, and almost is answering to what extent. For number two, my family arose very early to go to the sunrise service. So here we have our adverb very, which also answers to what extent, pointing to our adjective early, which answers how. How early? Very early. So this is what you're going to do for numbers 3 through 14. Find the adverb first and then draw the arrow. So here for spelling for Tuesday, again, we are just reviewing our past chapters 13 through 17. So we don't have a new list. We are just reviewing a few of our past lists. So here we're actually going to be reviewing these words, these pattern words, and all you're going to do is find them in the word search, circle them, and then write them on the lines. So just as it says up here, across, down, diagonally, and backwards, some of the words share letters. Just find them, circle them, and write them. Here, as you are used to, you're just going to find these words in the shape boxes. Remember that there are the tall letters, the letters that go down, the dotted ones are obviously eyes, and then it says each shaded portion indicates the accented syllable. You don't have to pay too much attention to that. In my opinion, it can make it more confusing. So just use the words as they're shaped. Just another reminder that we are doing our Phantom Toll Booth read-alongs. Remember that Tuesday we will be starting with Beyond Expectations together. So please join me on Zoom today so we can read along together, and then you have your written activities. Tomorrow we will go on to chapter 3 together.